All right, y'all, what's going on? It's Combo Breaker 99 back with another first look. All right, y'all, it's going down October 18th, UFC Vancouver. Manon Fiorot makes a return against none other than Jasmine Jasudavicius, y'all. All right, I called this matchup. I called this one a little while back that I wanted to see this fight. I know I talked about wanting to see Manon take on Alexa Grasso, but I figured they might be holding on to Alexa Grasso for a Rose Namajunas fight. Instead, they would make this one here since Manon and Jasmine both fought on May 10th as well. They would have the same, they have the same turnaround time. So this fight would make a lot of sense, right? For Jasmine, she's on a 5-fight tear. She's earned a top 5 contender to put her in a place for a title shot at some point, right? And Manon, after losing to the champ, she has to get back in there and fight a dangerous opponent to prove she's still one of the better flyweights out there under Valentina and Natalia, right? So first look, I like this matchup, man. I like it. Manon and Jasmine, they're two of the biggest flyweights in the division right now with contrasting styles, both improving in their well-rounded games. So this should be an interesting fight. It should be, both are really competitive and strong. So I really can't wait to see these two lock up. I know Manon might want to, keep it at a distance and strike, but I think when these two lock up, it's going to be interesting. Jasmine, she's come far since her loss to Tracy Cortez. She's worked on her hands, developed her jab. She fights a lot smarter and just doesn't run into shots anymore, but she sets them up and eventually she'll go for a takedown. So, yeah, I like what she's doing. I see Jasmine extending her punches a lot, just using more lateral movement, not coming straight forward. Like she still has that brawl in her and that dog in her where she'll like to, lock up and get you to the cage and get you to the ground and, use that ground and pound. But overall, like I see her extending that jab and using leg kicks more. So fighting like a tall fighter is important. Fighting like a tall fighter is important. And I think she's starting to realize that. She likes to brawl, like I said, but she's starting to understand that, all right, to have longevity in the top 10 or top 5, you got to fight smarter, right? You got to start extending those punches and avoid punishment, right? And that's all I'm saying. That's all I've been wanting to see with Jasmine. And I'm starting to see that, really starting to see that. Manon, she came far up the ladder. She fought 7 fights in a row to get to the title, won all 7, fought a tough fight with Valentina, showed how tough she was, showed that she could go in there and make it tough. But at times, you could still see that Manon wasn't ready for that. She wasn't ready for that level. In my opinion, I still think she beats a lot of girls in the division. But in this fight here against Jasmine, she's got to earn the respect in this fight. She's got to start sitting down on her shots. She's got to protect her chin as well. She can't be afraid to use her size in this fight and fight a little more rugged than she has in the past. Use that strength. And to me, she has to fight to try to finish Jasmine. She's got to get Jasmine's respect if she really wants to climb back up that ladder and show, oh, okay, this girl's ready for Valentina again. She's got to evolve into being that fighter that uses her size, especially whenever you're fighting somebody as big as Jasmine, because like I said before, and this is before I haven't recorded the video yet, but after I saw the fight with Valentina, I was like, all right, Manon would have did better to start using her size in those fights against like Rose and Chikagan, before that title fight to kind of grow into learning how to fight more like a big fighter and make herself more intimidating. Now, I know, looking at her size and height, she is intimidating, but if you really know how to use it, that makes you even more so intimidating, right? So I think that it's important she goes in there and makes her strength known. I know Jasmine is really a solid wrestler, so Manon can't really put herself in too much danger, right? She can't really go in there and stay on the ground with her too much and give her that opportunity, to try to submit her or even like control her and wear herself down, but just mix it up. I think it's important that she mixes up her boxing and grappling wisely against somebody like Jasmine, but same can be said for Jasmine, so I really want to see both fighters in this one fight like big fighters. They got to go in there and fight like big fighters because I think when they do that, you're going to see them really push themselves and you're going to see who can make the adjustments first. So a lot of questions to answer in this fight. A lot of questions that need to be answered, especially with Jasmine's side. Like, is Jasmine quick enough? Will Jasmine know how to use her longer reach than Manon? Or can she find Manon's timing? Does she have better timing than Manon at this point with her striking, with her stand-up? Is she stronger than Manon? Or does she have the gas tank to wear Manon down? That's some questions I want to know. For Manon, does Manon Fiorot still have it? Like, did that fight against Valentina take away something? Or did it add a little bit more fire to her to go back to the drawing board and change up some things? And like I said, fight a little bit like a bigger fighter, like go in there and try to outmuscle these girls now. Like, so many questions, so many questions I want to see answered in this one. But yeah, it's going down, y'all. UFC Vancouver. Will this lead to a title shot for Jasmine Jasudavicius after Natalia Silva? I know from Manon, if she wins, it'll probably lead to her fighting another fight, maybe the loser of Shevchenko Silva, or maybe a rematch with Erin Blanchfield, but we'll see. But what do y'all think, guys, in the comment section? Like, who do y'all got early on in this fight? Who do you think is stronger? Hit that like button and subscribe. Combo Breaker 99. I'm out. Peace.